Hey, John. Hey, John, it's Sharon now?
I just texted her.
Good morning.
We're live too.
I forgot to call you yesterday.
I was looking forward to it too.
On Facebook?
Well, and YouTube, QAC.
We ready?
Yes.
I bring to order the Queen Anne's County Planning Commission for Thursday, October 13th, 2022. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public comments? You have anything on extension request? None? Updates, legislation and legal matters. Skip right over that, didn't I?
Good morning.
Morning.
Amy Mordoff, Planning Director.
Hi, I'm Rob Tracy. I'm Senior Planner.
So I have a few updates, and they're mainly congratulatory updates related to your hard work with the comprehensive plan, because our comp plan update has been well received throughout the community, and we have been on a speaking tour talking about different sections of the comp plan that other jurisdictions would like to learn more about, and other agencies. So a few of the top venues where we've been speaking, Stephanie spoke with Talbot County, and they're updating their comprehensive plan, and she was invited there to sit on a panel. This was
We were in fact the first, correct?
I don't know that we were the first in the state, but our plan is very good. There was a lot of hard work, and there are some really there are really some strong initiatives in that plan. So she was there to talk basically about the process. On the 19th of October, next week, I've been asked to sit on a panel to discuss our housing chapter. Our housing chapter incorporated and was updated in tandem with our housing department's 2021 housing study, which really informed some of our affordable housing initiatives. We didn't find solutions to providing affordable housing, but we set the groundwork to start looking at the strategies in the 2021 housing study, and basically de facto adopted that study into our comp plan. And that is innovative in that close relationship that we have with our Department of Housing and Community Development. MACO this year is focusing on affordable housing in terms of the legislation they're looking to pursue. I don't know what that's going to look like, but as I'm attending these meetings and learning more about it, I'll be keeping you updated. In addition, on the housing front, the Department of Planning is featuring our housing chapter in their, it's not a monthly newsletter, I think it's a quarterly newsletter, but they have written an article about that chapter of our comp plan. So well done on your work on that. In addition, Stephanie and I have been asked to meet with the Centerville. There's a Centerville subcommittee that is focused on economic development, and we are meeting with them on the 26th of October at the library one evening, I think from 6 to 7:30, and we're collaborating with the town to look at their growth areas, to look at economic development matters. So we'll be focusing on our land use chapter and our economic development chapter of the comp plan to make sure that the comments that they gave us during the update process, that we are moving forward with those collaborative efforts. And then finally, Stephanie and I are both presenting at the Maryland Association of Stormwater and Floodplain Managers. They have an annual conference, and we're presenting at that conference this year regarding our resiliency planning efforts that are very fulsome, that have been incorporated into our comprehensive plan. Our resiliency planning, our sea level rise, and our hazard mitigation planning, pulling all of our many documents together and supporting those through our comp plan is also kind of groundbreaking. And our commitment to completing that resiliency planning and financing study. We got to the resiliency planning part, and we have to continue to look at ways to finance and deal with the economic impacts of sea level rise. So.
So my name is Rob Tracy. I work with the Queen Anne's County Liquor Board as a legislative liaison. The Tennessee Wine and Spirit Retailers Association versus Thomas, which is a Supreme Court case, ruled that the residency requirements for liquor license are unconstitutional. The Maryland Attorney General's office has put out an opinion stating basically
have to talk louder, Rob.
Is that better? I'm sorry.
Well, from here, I think.
The Maryland Attorney General's office has put out an opinion stating that the residency requirements based on the Supreme Court case are unconstitutional. So the Liquor Board looked into their code with the state, and they're proposing to change the partnership section for licenses to eliminate that residency requirement to be in compliance with the Supreme Court case and the Maryland Attorney General's office. It's a very narrow bill, and it's just intended to be in compliance, cross our T's and dot our I's to make sure that we're in line with the Supreme Court case and the Maryland Attorney General's office opinion.
Is there any intent to try to rewrite it to be in compliance with the Supreme Court ruling and still try and get it back to being a residency requirement, or just it's not a possibility?
Constitution. Not if it's unconstitutional.
Yeah, right.
So the Liquor Board has forwarded this legislation to the county commissioners for their consideration to be submitted to the state legislator in their session. What the state legislator does with it is anyone's guess. So.
Okay.
We'll keep you updated.
Couple things. I actually am on a panel on anybody going to the Planning Commission conference in Frederick later this month. So it's the Maryland. Anybody remember what it's called? Planning Commission Association.
The Maryland Association of Planning Commissions.
Okay.
And Boards of Appeals, but they're not in the acronym.
Well, that's in Frederick on October 26th, and I will be appearing to discuss comp plan consistency. Secondly, with Planning Commission members who are also on the panel from other counties, and forgotten his name, he works for the Department of Planning. Yesterday, I was in Baltimore before the Public Service Commission. I'll try to make this as brief as possible on behalf of Dorchester County. A large solar facility was approved by the Public Service Commission some months ago outside East Newmarket. It was granted what's called a CPCN. A condition of CPCN approval across the board, but in this one in particular, was that the applicant receive site plan approval from the local planning commission. The use in Dorchester County is permitted by special exception presently. However, the applicant, though it applied for special exception approval, never followed through and received special exception approval. And that, to some extent, is the result of a decision by the board to table the application purportedly because Dorchester County was then going through an update to its comprehensive plan. What that had to do with whether or not the special exception should have been granted is open for question. At any rate, neither the board nor the applicant removed the application from the table after the comp plan was adopted last year, and so the special exception approval was never granted. The applicant then came to the Planning Commission and asked for site plan approval in August. The Planning Commission declined to grant site plan approval because it believed, I believe correctly, that it did not have authority to grant site plan approval for a use that was not permitted. And this is an example of the so-called regulatory gap that has been acknowledged by everyone involved with utility scale solar, including the Public Service Commission, for a number of years. That is, if you get state approval for a solar facility at a certain location, and a condition of that approval is some local approvals, whether it's site plan, building permits, grading permits, and so on, but the local jurisdiction doesn't recognize it as a permitted use, what happens? It's the regulatory gap. And this is the first time that the regulatory gap has been something other than hypothetical. This was the first time that the gap actually mattered in real life. Planning Commission declined to approve the site plan, but said if you get special exception approval, we find that the site plan meets the technical requirements of the Dorchester County Code. It was an effort to try and move things along rather than just say no and leave the thing up in the air. Well, it wasn't long before the applicant, Newmarket Solar, requested that the Public Service Commission find that the site plan condition had been satisfied, even though the Planning Commission hadn't approved anything, but it indicated it would if the use became permitted under the zoning code. We objected, and that produced the meeting that was on the meeting agenda yesterday. All the state agencies involved piled on to the applicant's bandwagon, not surprisingly, saying, well, the perennial solar decision preempts local zoning and therefore the applicant shouldn't have to get special exception approval because the Public Service Commission has approved the location, and to make them go get special exception approval violates the preemption created under the perennial solar decision. And that the county is just delaying things unnecessarily and being obstructionist. Our point was that they've all missed the point. This has nothing to do with location. We accept that the Public Service Commission is in charge of where these things go. The reason that the county is insisting that they get special exception approval is to imbue the Planning Commission with authority to approve the site plan, and for Planning and Zoning to have the authority to grant or to issue building permits, grading permits, and so on. You will not be surprised to learn that my arguments on behalf of Dorchester County were rejected unanimously by the Public Service Commission yesterday, and they approved the request of the applicant that the site plan condition of the CPCN approval has been satisfied. That does not solve the problem, for example, of the Dorchester County Department of Planning and Zoning's authority to issue permits, because there's still no site plan approval in the county. So the regulatory gap issue has not been solved in Dorchester County. It's probably been made murkier. This is going to come up in Kent County, for sure. It would come up in this county if someone proposed a utility scale solar outside the solar overlay district. And it will definitely come up in Caroline and/or Talbot counties once their maximum acreage is exceeded. Caroline County is 2,000 acres. Talbot County is 765 acres or something like that. Frederick County is engaged in a war with the Public Service Commission over similar issues. So I suggested to the Public Service Commission that they endorse the concept of a legislative fix to this entire problem. The General Assembly is going to, in my view, has to fix this in a manner that respects all the various interests. That was a non-starter, apparently. So that's where we are as of yesterday.
You had a great day yesterday.
I sort of got a body part handed to me yesterday. Not surprising. It doesn't surprise me. I mean, we had Public Service Commission staff and its lawyers lined up on the applicant side, PPRP, Power Plant Research Program, even the Office of People's Counsel, all lined up on, because this, from their point of view, this has to happen to meet the
Then
renewable.
how can it happen?
To meet the renewable portfolio standards. I'm sorry?
How can it happen?
They're going to keep, they're just going to keep right on. Until
Do
some
they
court
have a
sa-
suggestion of how to fix it?
No.
Or
No,
they're just saying no?
no. Now, I suggested to him yesterday, fine, if a legislative fix could be from the General Assembly that the Public Service Commission is in charge of everything, where they are, where these things go, location, and what they look like, site plan, permits, and so on. And if that's the fix, that the Public Service Commission should be prepared to have staff count trees, count the number of trees that are living, the number of trees that are dead, make sure that silt fences are in place, and take over when they're not properly in place and there's mud all over the place. Call the bond companies when the applicants don't respond to dead trees, because right now the counties do all that. And if the counties don't have authority under properly issued permits to enforce the local code, someone has to do it, and it should be the Public Service Commission. I think that went over like, I have an expression in mind, and it's something in a punch bowl. They didn't want to do that. So they don't have a solution. It's just sort of full steam ahead from their point of view, and we got to figure it out.
Chris, I think the obvious question is if a local jurisdiction truly doesn't have the authority to grant a building permit, if zoning administrators across the state under these circumstances don't have that authority, will there be some kind of mandate that zoning administrators do so under compliance with the codes that exist in terms of looking at the applications and do they comply with a zoning district setbacks regardless of what this use is and other standards? Well, is it possible that there can be some kind of mandate issued by who, I don't know, or what arm of the public
It'll only be the General Assembly.
Right.
The Public Service Commission can't order or direct or force local jurisdictions to do anything that they perceive to be illegal.
And conversely, state departments issue licenses that then become a part of a local building permit application. Is there a legal possibility that if such state licenses were issued through MDE, who has sediment control and stormwater management authority, would it be possible that those regulatory agencies would issue licenses outside of a local authority and then conduct inspections?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that it's not clear to me who ultimately signs the sediment and erosion control permit, for example.
Local jurisdiction
That's what I
signs the
thought.
permit.
And I don't know offhand, I'd have to look to see whether MDE can claw that back and sign such a permit. Maybe that's what they're going to have to do, and they're going to have to be enforcing it, because the locals will not have issued the permit and have no enforcement authority. And we have experience with MDE's enforcement lack of effort. So,
See a lawsuit coming? Just curious.
oh yeah. I don't know what Dorchester County's going to do. I reported what happened. I sent an email to the county attorneys in some of the other counties that are facing this issue. I would hope to get some support from the other counties to see what could be done. The underlying problem in all this is that the Eastern Shore and Western Maryland have the acreage but not the votes. And everything in between doesn't have the acreage but has the votes.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else?
Not enough?
That's enough. All right, I was remiss that I passed over the meeting minute review.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that the meeting minutes from Thursday, September 8th be passed as written or submitted.
Second?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Update the fee schedule, site plan and subdivision amendments.
Morning, Stephanie Jones, Long Range Principal Planner. So the memorandum you have before you, it's a two-part, kind of a twofold item, I guess, in regards to the update of the fee schedule. The first part is more of an informational item to the Planning Commission in regards to an amendment fee for site plans and subdivisions and also engineering plans. And Rob's going to discuss that item a little bit.
Good morning. As Stephanie said, I'm here to discuss an informational item.
You got to speak up, Rob. I can't hear you.
Turn his mic up. Yeah, well, yeah, I would.
Well, you may be good, but we can't hear him.
Yeah, okay. So as Stephanie said, I'm here to discuss an informational item that does not require a motion or action from this body. It's not uncommon for applicant to need to change a site plan or subdivision after approval has been given. There are various reasons that this happens, and sometimes it's the case that we can determine that it needs to be a new application, and there's sometimes where we treat it as an amendment. Currently, we don't have an established fee or process to determine when that happens, when a project that has been approved needs to be changed, when it is a new application, and when we can treat it as an amendment. So we worked very closely with the Department of Public Works, and I'm here today to kind of update you on the progress that we've made and that initiative. So we have established a process and fee schedule to establish consistency among the fees for amendments for new submittals. And the proposed fee schedule is in your packet, and those updates are in red. And like I said earlier, there's no motion or action required by this body. This is just an informational update for you all.
All right, then the second portion of that fee schedule update is an amendment to allow a fee for citizen-sponsored text amendments. Currently, we have a fee for map amendments, but at this time, like I said, there's no fee for a citizen-sponsored text amendment. Staff has suggested that we assign the same fee that is applicable to a map amendment, which is a $1,500 application fee. All other applications that come forward to the planning department do have a fee. I believe this is the only application that does not have a fee. Within the last year, just this last cycle, we had 6 submitted citizen-sponsored text amendments in February. Of those 6, 1 was withdrawn at the time of we were doing staff review. 2 were withdrawn after your planning commission decisions were made. 1 was, changed during the review process. I think I mentioned that one. But then in the end, only 1 has actually gone forward to the commissioners. The other one, the applicant has requested at the public hearing with the county commissioners be put on hold. So throughout that entire 6 applications, we've had 1 actually go through the entire process at this time. So staff feels that with the work that's done, obviously, through staff and all the other department agencies, that requiring this fee would be sufficient, and that you send a favorable recommendation for the text amendment to the county commissioners.
Are you looking for a motion as such?
Yep, for that one,
Okay.
need a motion.
Do we get a motion? I mean, staff spends a lot of time working, just as much time as you do on the fee paid operations, correct?
Yeah, and I don't know the last time a map amendment has actually been before you. I've been with the county for 2 years now, and we haven't had a map amendment, so you're looking at maybe 1 every couple years, maybe, as opposed to your text amendments, which you're reviewing pretty much every
What would
year.
be the downside, other than just not getting income?
The downside as for not approving the fee. I think in the end, requiring that fee puts the applicant in a little bit higher wanting to pay attention to what they're doing when they're submitting necessarily. And for example, the 1 text amendment, we had it in and the applicant changed it during our review process, just because, implications of the code and what they proposed wasn't what they wanted in the end. So requiring a fee might kind of put that a little bit higher of a test for them to look at things before submitting.
So staff doesn't have to jump through all the hoops?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Are you short of help?
Are we short of help?
Yeah.
Oh, no, we're fully staffed at this point in time.
Okay, so what's the $9,000 for then? What's
9,000?
that gonna do? You said six amendments on average.
Oh, right.
I shouldn't say she. I had a little conversation this morning. We were guessing maybe a half a dozen of these things a year. So you're talking $9,000,
Right.
right?
What would it go to, or what would it cover?
Yeah, what?
So
what? I
there
mean,
is,
Other than keeping someone out of lesser means who would like to see a change.
so there is a requirement.
What good would that really
Yep.
do in the grand scheme of things?
So there is a requirement that all of these text amendments, when it goes for a public hearing, for it to be posted in the paper. It requires the county to pay for those postings every single time that a public hearing would occur. So it covers that cost of that.
It's $1,500 to do that?
And instead of the staff spending all their time working on something that
Yeah,
people
but-
haven't thought through, wait a minute, but they still have a responsibility to think through what they're putting up for an amendment. You don't feel that they have a responsibility to do that?
I just
We can just go
feel
home
like,
and
don't
do
they
some dreams and
already
put it
have
on
enough
paper?
money? That's what I'm saying. Do you not have enough money, enough help? You've already told me you have enough help.
Well, that means we
And
should do away with all
apparently you've
fees.
paid all your bills. I mean, we haven't had any issues I've heard about in front of the commissioners about you guys not paying your bills.
Then why don't we do away with all fees?
Well, now we're talking. Yeah,
I don't think that's on the table.
well,
Madam Chair, I'll make an amendment, or excuse me, a motion, please, that the Queen Anne's County Planning Commission send a favorable recommendation to the county commissioners for amendment County Ordinance 2212 to allow the county commissioners to set a fee for citizen-sponsored text amendments to match the fee currently established for map amendments of $1,500.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Or would you like to discuss it more?
no, that's fine. Go ahead, Kathy.
I find myself agreeing with Mr. Sylvester. I think that these are county citizens. They pay their county taxes. They pay their property taxes. I know in my family, my husband and I have dutifully done so for 27 years. Don't have any children in the school system, don't have trash pickup, never asked really anything of the county. For the small number of these applications that come forward, I feel that this is a unique opportunity for citizens to come forward with an attempt at a text amendment. And therefore, that is why I'll be voting against the favorable recommendation.
I will put it out there. We've looked across, obviously, the state, and it is pretty standard for a county to require basically the same fee for a map amendment and a text amendment. So that is something I can offer.
It's okay to be outside the norm from time
Oh, I
to
know.
time.
I just figured I'd.
You know, I'm sorry, I sit here and I look at where this county is now with its budget and where it was, say, 5 or 10 years ago, and the budget has done nothing but increase, increase, and increase. I look at taxes, and I call all these fees taxes. I make no difference between any of them. They're all taxes. And in this county, tripled the recordation fees to build a courthouse. Went from $3.30 per thousand, I believe, to $9.90 per thousand to pay for a courthouse. Of course, some of that money was then sidelined and went to somewhere else. I don't even know. We have no idea as a county where that courthouse is now as far as being paid. But I guarantee you, once it's paid, we'll never see any of that money refunded to, or shouldn't say refunded, but you certainly won't see that tax lowered. You never see it lowered. To give you another example, you got a county that imposed an increase in property taxes, a massive increase in property taxes on solar arrays to pay for broadband. We've done absolutely nothing with it. And now it's private enterprise, Chop Tank Electric, that is going to provide broadband to rural Queen Anne's County by a large percentage. I don't know if everyone's getting it, I doubt it. But a large portion of the county, that problem is fixed at no cost to the taxpayer. Now, do you think that that money will get rerouted or that tax will be lowered? I've seen the surpluses in this county since the George Bush recession be pretty substantial, and that's, the commissioners are to be commended for that. But I don't believe any of that money has been refunded. And I don't think any of the piggyback tax has ever been lowered from its 3.2% to its, which is the legal limit, down to maybe what it was before the recession was at 2.8%. So I don't think it's a lack of money that this county has to pay you guys to do what you're supposed to be doing anyway. And this tax, let's get real. This tax, once it's imposed, it'll never go away and it'll only increase. Correct?
I mean, at some point in time, but we haven't increased fees, I know, in a very, for planning and zoning fees, per se. They have not been increased, I know, in a very long time.
Yeah.
So.
It's a tax. That's all it is.
And they've lowered our taxes. They've lowered our taxes, and we have not had a tax increase in Queen Anne's County.
Well, you know what, because we're going
For
to
how
get
many
into a
years?
discussion argument on that, which I hate arguing with you, you know that. And I, generally speaking, have a lot of respect for our commissioners, at least all of them, quite frankly. And I think they've done a pretty good job. But to say our taxes haven't been increases, our property taxes, is a bit disingenuous. Our taxes go up every year because the assessments go up every year. To say that the tax rate didn't change, well, that's fine. They didn't change the tax rate. But the taxes have gone up. I'm sorry, I just look at it, you know, I made a comment at our meeting a while back. I'm basically for 4 things. Lower taxes, fewer regulations, smaller government, and more freedom. I'm not going to back off from that. And you're asking me to vote for more taxes when I don't think you need them. I don't think it's going to, $9,000 isn't going to affect you one bit, all right? But there may be somebody in this county of lesser means who $1,500 is a pile of money. I still pick up pennies, so I mean, that's who I am. So I'll be voting no.
Any other discussion? Can we have a vote? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
All right.
Wait a minute.
Okay, well, I need a
Voice vote.
voice vote. Jeff?
Aye.
Art?
Nay.
Wait a minute, I got to put down favor, unfavor here. First time I've taken notes in 20 years.
It's supposed to be that hard.
Okay, I'm up to speed.
All right, Teddy?
No.
Favorable.
Tom? Favorable?
No,
Kathy?
unfavorable.
No.
Okay. What do you have?
The vote is 4 for an unfavorable recommendation and 3 for a favorable recommendation. So the planning commission would be sending an unfavorable recommendation to the commissioners.
Okay. Planning Commission work session.
All right, so the idea of this work session is really to give you not an update, but a FYI of some of the applications and items you're going to be seeing before you in the next couple months, mainly in the next 2 months, probably 1 or 2 months. So those are growth allocation. You did see a concept plan for a growth allocation this past summer, but that growth allocation petition has been filed and has been conveyed to the Planning Commission to make their recommendations. So I just wanted to go over growth allocation. Comprehensive rezonings, obviously, we just, well, I'll say just, but we finalized the comp plan. And if you recall, back to last summer, we went through about 48 requests to change the zoning on properties, but that was just specifically for the land use in the comp plan. Now this would be actually for the rezoning of the property, which follows the comp plan. And I added map amendments to this only because the comprehensive rezoning process and the map amendment process, obviously in the end, it's the same result, but it's a different process, so. So for growth allocation, I know we talked about it a little bit when we did the concept review process, but I just wanted to go into it a little bit more detail. So in the critical area, you have 3 designations: resource conservation area, limited development area, and intense development area. That resource conservation area is your large tracts of land, your agricultural land, usually your protected areas, forested areas, also wetlands. And then your limited development areas where it's a little more intensely developed. Usually you're looking at subdivisions for that type of development. And then intense development areas really where the county and the state looks for development to occur. So the RCA and the LDA have very similar requirements when it comes to lot coverage. They both have a 15% limit. Once you look to IDA, there is no lot coverage limit, but you're looking to do a 10% stormwater requirement. So they are different. But then moving on, obviously, to growth allocation. It's not a finite resource for the county. Of the RCA acreage, when the mapping was originally done, the county received 5% of that acreage for growth allocation. So in '89, after the county reserved growth allocation acreage to the towns, which is Queenstown, Churchill, and Centerville, there was 992 acres at that point in time. And then throughout the 33 years of the program, there's been 23 awards. So they are few and far between, but now in 2022, we have about 461 acres remaining of growth allocation. So why is it needed, or what triggers the growth allocation to be required? It can be that it's a use that's not permitted in that designation. So for example, in the resource conservation area, commercial uses aren't permitted, industrial uses, and institutional uses. So therefore, in order to have that use, they are usually permitted in the LDA or IDA. You have to go through growth allocation to get to that next designation in order for that use to be permitted. Also, in the RCA, there is a 1 to 20, dwelling unit requirement for doing subdivisions. If you want to basically create a subdivision at a greater density, you're going to have to go through growth allocation so that you're no longer have that 1 per 20 requirement. And then the last reason is lot coverage limits. Like I said, RCA and LDA have that 15% requirement, and IDA does not. So if you're looking to develop the parcel greater than 15%, you're going to need the growth allocation to get to intense development area, which no longer has that lot coverage limit. So those are a few reasons as to why someone coming in doing a project would need growth allocation. So the process is there before you. I know you've seen this exact list before, but we've gone through that first step, obviously, back in June or July for the proposal you'll be seeing in the next month or two. And that is basically for the Planning Commission to review the concept plan as they would any other concept plan and provide technical comments, in which you have. And then the applicant comes in and files a growth allocation petition, and they're to incorporate those technical comments that the Planning Commission has made within their petition to the county commissioners. So a petition has been received, and then the next step is for the county commissioners to refer that petition to the Planning Commission in order to hold a public hearing and basically to review that application. So just past Tuesday, the growth allocation petition for armored storage was conveyed to the Planning Commission. So you'll be seeing that very shortly in the next couple months, 1 or 2 months. So then you'll hold a public hearing during that meeting. Then you'll send a recommendation based on that review of it to the county commissioners. Following the county commissioners have a public hearing. And then the public hearing following, they will make a conceptual decision, and then that conceptual decision goes to the Critical Area Commission for their review also of the growth allocation. And then if it's approved at the Critical Area Commission level, it comes back to the county commissioners for their ultimate approval. So it is a very extensive process. Obviously the concept plan is that something you normally see, but the growth allocation public hearing, that's probably something not necessarily you see all the time. Have any of you actually been through a growth allocation process? No? Okay.
A long time.
All right. I think it was 18 or 19 maybe.
I've forgotten.
Maybe more than that. I think Sonny Schultz may have been the last one, or KRM.
Been a while. You're asking a lot out of this.
Dead longer than that.
Remember that?
It was the Mad Peak.
Mad, okay. So.
Sonny Schultz Drive, not Sonny
Yes,
Schultz himself.
not Sonny Schultz himself, drive, sorry. But, yeah, so it's a very extensive process that an applicant does go through. But in the end, they are able to develop in the manner that they're proposing. So where can growth allocation be awarded? Obviously, it only occurs within the critical area. It's not something, it's all within the critical area program. So the county basically prioritizes the growth area as to where they want growth allocation to occur. Obviously, you're requesting to go to a more intense development, so that makes sense because that's what the growth area is. It's more intense development. But it is that the applicant does have to provide a substantial economic benefit. And that's just not the cost of the development itself. That's usually the applicant will provide some type of financial contribution to the county. They'll provide or donate land to the county for a park or something of that use. And then growth allocation can be awarded outside of the growth area. I don't know that it has ever has it occurred in the county
I'm sorry.
that growth allocation has been awarded outside of the growth area? Has there been projects that, I looked through the list and it
don't think
didn't,
so.
I don't think that there was, if there was, it was very few. But there has to be a public need in order for that to be approved. And that's usually you're looking at the comprehensive plan as to where, you know, the person can identify that there is a public need for whatever the proposal may be. And as well, they have to provide the substantial economic benefit. So the requirements for growth allocation come through COMAR in the land use article. So it comes from the state level, just like every other critical area requirement does. In order, basically, for a growth allocation to be approved, there are adjacency requirements. That's basically you're saying you're proposing to become intense development area. They're saying that you have to follow a certain manner as to what's adjacent to you as to how you're awarded the growth, or if you're awarded the growth allocation. The application also requires an environmental report. You did not see that. I don't believe we sent that to you when you actually looked at the concept plan for armored storage, but the environmental report is a very extensive report for growth allocation, which you will receive a copy of, most likely digital because it's very large. But it goes through requirements that COMAR does require for a growth allocation submittal. And also,
Can I ask a question?
yeah, sure, go ahead.
Madam Chairman? Ask a question.
Sure. Yeah.
So you said something, I just didn't understand it, something about adjacency. Well, can you explain that better?
Yes, so in COMAR, it requires that, so if you want to go from, for example, an RCA, which is a resource conservation area, to an LDA or IDA, depending on what is adjacent to that parcel or the acreage of the designation around you, that is how you're allowed to move forward basically with growth allocation. So it's not basically.
Can you be specific about it to mathematically
Yeah,
explain it to
so
me,
for
maybe?
example, you're a waterfront parcel and you are RCA, but you're looking to become IDA because of your lot coverage limit, the first 300 feet of that property have to stay in RCA, and that's an adjacency requirement.
For the water.
Yep, so that's just one of the requirements
Okay.
that are through growth allocation.
Okay.
Yep.
The idea is not to create pockets
Isolated pieces.
Okay.
of so-called, I guess you would say, upgraded properties from a lower classification to a higher one, sort of.
You want to have some connectivity to them?
Yep. Let's see, where were we? Okay, so the next would be minimization of impacts to habitat protection areas. So your habitat protection areas, looking at the critical area program, are your buffer, non-tidal wetlands, your forest interior dwelling birds, your species of special concern. And basically, it's saying that in order for growth allocation to be awarded, you're to minimize those impacts and not impact those areas per se. And then you're to optimize water quality. So, for example, like I said, the intense development area requires that 10% pollutant reduction, and also the required stormwater requirements as well. It's saying you have to go above and beyond what is the requirement. So you're providing more stormwater treatment, or you're planting more than what's required in trees, or something to say that you're optimizing the water quality. And then, like I've already mentioned, the economic benefit, as in donation of land or some type of monetary donation to the county is an example.
Ask another question? Of all those requirements, how many of them are subjective?
Subjective as in you have to do it or not, or as
Or
in
just the amount? I
the
mean,
amount?
okay, I
Okay.
want to do this development and I'll give you $1,000. You're
So
like, I don't think so. How about
Right.
me?
there is nothing in the code or in state COMAR that says dependent on X or X development, it must be this. So it is subjective. Usually if you're looking at larger properties, I know for the Ken Island crossing that you looked at, I believe over the summer, that was a concept plan as well that went through growth allocation. They provided a lot of economic benefit. They were upgrading the roads, they were putting a traffic light, they were putting in crosswalks to the trails. So that was an extensive amount of economic benefit. Something that's at a smaller scale and less acreage, it might not be obviously listing off that many things. So it's all specific to the actual project itself. Yep. All right, so your role, I kind of already discussed that, but it's to review the concept plan and then obviously to hold the public hearing. And then when you hold the public hearing, you provide a recommendation to the commissioners. And really what your recommendation is to address the items that the commissioners are to address. So that's what is listed there in the white box. But also once you send the recommendation to the commissioners, you can also put conditions on that recommendation. That can include anything from setbacks to adding additional landscaping, any architectural features that you're looking at. So you look at basically the view of what you're looking at in front of you on your site plan or the architectural rendering. So what's already before you as the development standards of the project is what those conditions could potentially be. Some growth allocations, they don't send any conditions. Others, like you've seen with the Kent Island Crossing, there was an extensive amount. So it's all dependent on the application itself. So on to comprehensive rezoning request. So this is the result of the update of the comp plan. Of those rezoning requests that were received throughout that process, this is the end result, I guess, or the second half of that review. So during this process, and this is at any time of when there's a comp plan update, a property owner can submit a comprehensive rezoning request. So that is roughly every 10 years then. So what you have all done, you've looked at those requests, but you've looked at them in the manner of the land use, in the land use map, in the comprehensive plan. And then obviously the goals and strategies that are already outlined in the comp plan, and is there support for that rezoning to occur. So after the comp plan is adopted, those rezonings are to occur within 6 months. So you're going to be getting those before you, most likely next month. You'll be seeing them, holding a public hearing, and then sending recommendations to the county commissioners for all of them. And then the county commissioners will have a public hearing, and then they'll also make the ultimate decision as to whether the the zoning will change on that property. So with the 2022 comp plan update, there'll be 16 comprehensive rezoning requests that you'll have before you, and then there'll be an additional 4 rezonings that come from the reduction of the growth area. So in total, there'll be 20. And what we'll do is we'll give you a spreadsheet with all of these, kind of similar to what you saw with the land use review. But then you'll make your decisions and we'll do one final vote at the end instead of voting individually, which hopefully that'll make it a little easier to do one final vote at the end. And then, like I said, your recommendations to the commissioners is really looking at the consistency of the comp plan. So all of these rezoning requests that'll be before you, you've already reviewed them with the land use. So they are consistent with the land use map themselves. So in your staff report, or in my staff report and Rob's staff report, it'll just say how it's consistent with the comp plan, the mapping and goals and strategies. So, and then the other, I guess, option, if someone was to go through a zoning change, is a map amendment. Now that occurs every year when someone can submit it the first 10 business days of February. And that is when basically you would hold a public hearing and it's conveyed from the commissioners to you as a public hearing. And then you send a recommendation to the county commissioners and they hold their public hearing as well and then vote. So the requirements for a map amendment come from the state, from the land use article. So the 2 findings basically that have to be, or one or the other, is there has to be a substantial change in the character of the neighborhood of the property where it's located, or there's a mistake in the zoning classification or the mapping. It has to be one or the other. This is I guess, a very substantial process for an applicant to prove, whether it's looking at historical images or you're looking at a lot of history to be able to prove it usually. And then in the county code, it requires that a plat be submitted to the county showing where the rezoning is going to occur and what the rezoning is. And then your role, obviously, like I said, is a public hearing and then your recommendation to the county commissioners. And usually that recommendation should include what they have to consider. The items they have to consider are there in that white box, but that's, the population change, the availability to public facilities, present and future transportation patterns, and then compatibility with the existing and proposed development of the area. Is that proposed zoning district, is that purpose consistent with the surrounding area, or would it be consistent? And then also, are those uses that are basically permitted in that proposed zoning district, would that be consistent in that area as well? So those are the two differences really between map amendments and then the comprehensive rezoning requests. So if you have any other questions about the comprehensive rezoning requests or map amendments.
Okay. Any questions?
So for our next meeting, I should put on my calendar, long meeting, or?
Yes. Hopefully, I'm hoping the comprehensive rezonings, obviously you've seen them, you saw them last summer, so hopefully that will be, it'll be smoother than what it was for that land use review. So I think, obviously, they'll probably all pop out in your head that you've looked at them before, and the consistency will be there with the comp plan, so. Yep.
Any other items of business? Amy, got anything else? Yeah. Public comments?
John does.
Oh, way to go, John. It's almost out here.
No, it's fine. I just want to mention to everybody, the next meeting, November 10th, will be held at the Liberty Building, because this room will be occupied for the election,
Okay.
so.
I can depend on you to remind me, right?
Will.
Mr. Ebersberger, do you have a motion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Any second?
Second.
All in favor? So moved.
Thank you. Have a great day.